ॐ प्रपन्नपारिजाताय तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः.
Namaste everybody. Bhagavad Gita 18 chapters, 3 equal divisions, 6 chapters in one division. அது வந்து Shatkam சொல்லுவாங்க, consisting of 6 chapters, but then they stand for a profound statement, the Mahavakya TAT TVAM ASI. அதுல the 3 Shatkams stand for each of the words. அதுல the first Shatkam is Tvam. அதை நம்ம படிச்சு முடிச்சிட்டோம். இன்னைக்கு வந்து அதோட ஒரு குவிக் ரீகேப், சம்மரி மேல போலாம். I have a small announcement to make. After this revision session, there will be a gap before the next session appears. That's due to personal commitments that have arisen for me. நான் திரும்பியும் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணும்போது அதுக்கு முன்னால I will definitely make an announcement. Okay. As we had said earlier, I have picked up select shlokas from each chapter. அதுக்கு வந்து guided chanting and detailed explanation கொடுத்துட்டு வந்துட்டு அந்த uncovered shlokas in between வரதுக்கு a gist, essence of that was also said. So நம்ம வந்து first shatkam chapters 1 to 6 கவர் பண்ணிட்டோம். அதனுடைய summary recap இப்ப பார்க்கலாம். There are many Mahavakyas. Mahavakya is a small phrase with profound wisdom in it. அதுல ஒண்ணுதான் நம்ம பேசிட்டு இருக்கிறோம். தத்து துவம் அசி சேர்த்தி சொல்லும்போது தத்துவம் அசி, அது நீங்க நிறைய பேர் கேட்டிருப்பீங்க. துவம்ங்கிறது வந்து ஜீவாத்மா, the Atman in all the living beings, you and I and everybody else. தத்துங்கிறது வந்து the super power பரமாத்மா. அசிங்கிறது வந்து அந்த ஜீவாத்மா அந்த பரமாத்மா ஐக்கியம். That is ultimately Jeevatma and Paramatma are one and the same. இதுல Bhagavad Gitaல the 3 Shatkams represent 3 of this. அதுல நம்ம பார்க்கிறது வந்து first Shatkam, chapter 1 to 6. That is represented by Tvam Pada. Discussions on Tvam is on the Jeevatma. In all living beings, the Atman. And this is taking us towards the Karma Yoga path. So the first 6 chapters, the first Shatkam is representing the Tvam-pada. மேல போலாம். In Bhagavad Gita, consisting of 18 chapters divided into 3 Shatkams, we have completed the first Shatkam consisting of 6 chapters. And the 6 chapters oda heading first நான் சொல்லிட்டு then we will take up each chapter for a brief summary of the contents. முதல் chapter Arjuna Vishada Yoga. Every chapter in Bhagavad Gita is called a yoga. Yoga in a broad sense is the unison of body, mind, intellect, emotions, ego, all together focused. Arjuna Vishada Yoga is Arjuna's sorrow. This consists of 47 shlokas given in the first bracket, out of which we took for detailed discussions 3 shlokas. The second chapter, Sankhya Yoga, analytical knowledge or the reasoning. This has 72 shlokas. We took for discussion 28 shlokas. So large portion came from chapter 2. I had also mentioned the reason. The chapter 2 and chapter 18 are the windows to Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 2 gives a prelude of Varapordella, and chapter 18 summarizes. Right. Chapter 3 is Karma Yoga, action. This has 43 shlokas. We took for discussion 4 shlokas. Chapter 4 was Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yoga, that's renunciation of action through knowledge. It has 42 shlokas. We took for discussion 11. Fifth one was Sanyasa Yoga, renunciation. This has 29 shlokas. We discussed 3 shlokas. And finally, chapter 6 is Dhyana Yoga, meditation, 47 shlokas, and we took up 3 for detailed discussions. So to say again, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, which is Arjuna's sorrow, Sankhya Yoga, analytical knowledge or the reasoning, Karma Yoga, action, Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yoga, renunciation of action through knowledge, Sanyasa Yoga, the renunciation, and Dhyana Yoga, meditation. And a total of 280 shlokas out of the 700 in Bhagavad Gita. And we have taken for detailed discussions 52 from first Shatkam. So now I will give a brief summary of each of the chapters. Let's go further. Chapter 1. Chapter 1, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, is more of a prologue, the Pairam or the Munnurai for Bhagavad Gita. It sets the stage for the events coming later. Initially, it starts with King Dhritarashtra uttering the first shloka, asking his minister Sanjaya to give a running commentary about what all is happening in the battlefield, in the war between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, whereas 100 sons are involved from the Kaurava side. And as Sanjaya is describing the war scene, it gives a nice introduction to the two sides of the army. And Arjuna is leading the army of Pandavas. Lord Krishna is the charioteer for Arjuna. Lord Krishna had said he will not take the arms, but he agreed to be the charioteer for Arjuna. And now comes the turning point. Arjuna tells Krishna to park the chariot in the middle between the two armies. He wants to survey the army, enemy army particularly, to see what formations they have, etc. And Lord Krishna, in his mischievous wisdom, he goes and parks the chariot right in the middle in front of Bhishma and Drona, for who Arjuna has got a deep respect. Looking at them, Arjuna's emotions are whipped up. So he suddenly feels very compassionate for the humanity at large, and he says, how can he kill the people? And he further says that if he kills the menfolk, the women and the children will go without menfolk in the house, which will cause a disruption to the family life, in turn to the dharmic life in the society at large. Underlying cause for Arjuna's compassion, which turned into a depression, it's primarily because of the thought, how will he kill his guru and the grandsire, though Arjuna doesn't spell it out yet. And Arjuna, in the bout of depression, he throws the bow and arrow and sits on the chariot. This poses a serious challenge to Lord Krishna, because Lord Krishna is only a subordinate as a charioteer, and therefore Lord Krishna has to rise to the occasion, advise Arjuna, and bring him on to taking the weapons to fight a war again. There lies the challenge. So whole Bhagavad Gita goes about how does Lord Krishna pull Arjuna out from that state of depression. An excellent treatise on communication, counseling, and the exchange of wisdom. Let's go further. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is Sankhya Yoga, analytical knowledge or analytical reasoning. Lord Krishna uses the power of logical reasoning to convince Arjuna to get him out of the depression. So, initially, seeing Arjuna in tears, Lord Krishna instigates Arjuna by saying that such a cowardice is not acceptable for a person of Arjuna's caliber. அதை கேட்ட உடனே Arjuna's pride is touched to the quick. So Arjuna immediately says, how can he kill the guru and grandsire and still hope to live happily? So Arjuna instead says he would rather go begging for a living than kill the people. And Arjuna throws the bow and arrow and goes silent. So Lord Krishna has to make Arjuna talk and make him listen. Therefore, he adopts the path of reasoning with Arjuna. There are two issues Lord Krishna has to handle. One is he has to make Arjuna take up weapons again. That is, do Arjuna's karma as a kshatriya, which is to wage the dharmic war. The second is Lord Krishna has to remove the fear from Arjuna's mind, because Arjuna is depressed with the thought of having to kill the guru and the grandsire and others. So Lord Krishna brings in the concept of Atma. So he says Atma exists in all the living beings. Atma is imperishable. And he says Atma sheds a dead body, goes into another body, which is similar to a human being shedding a worn out cloth and wearing a new cloth. So he says Atma is imperishable, it cannot be destroyed by any of the means. Therefore, Arjuna need not worry about having to kill. And next is the task of making Arjuna take up to weapons, doing the karma. So Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that if he doesn't fight a war, his enemies will talk ill about him. And having earned a high reputation, Arjuna will go down the path in the reputation, which is not right for a king. And Lord Krishna says, such a dharmic war is a great boon for a king to happen. And then Lord Krishna takes Arjuna through the path of Karma Yoga. That is, he says one should do one's karma as a yoga, applying his body, mind, intellect, emotions all together, doing karma for the sake of karma without looking for the benefits of a karma. And in addition, Lord Krishna also says desire is the root cause of all evils. Therefore, he says drop desire, do karma for the sake of karma. And finally, Lord Krishna also tells about the glory of Jnana Yoga. Jnana is Atma Jnana, self-knowledge. Am I? Who am I? Am I the body, mind, or intellect, or what am I? No. I am much beyond that. The imperishable Atman, the Jeevatma. And Lord Krishna says to reach that path of liberation, one takes the path of Karma Yoga, which is part of Jnana Yoga, or one should take the path of Bhakti Yoga. So Lord Krishna advocates equanimity of mind, dualities to take them all in one stride, with a firm wisdom that Jeevatma, Paramatma are one. So that ends the chapter 2. Let's go further. Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is Karma Yoga. That's doing karma as a yoga without karma pala in mind. When towards the end of chapter 2, Lord Krishna was extolling the virtues of Jnana Yoga, that is Atma Jnana, self-knowledge. As a path towards liberation, Arjuna immediately asked Krishna if Jnana is superior to karma. Krishna, why are you forcing me into war, which is the karma for a Kshatriya? Lord Krishna then clarifies to Arjuna that no living being can even for a moment be without doing an action. Therefore, he says what is important is to continue doing one's actions without the end result in mind. Lord Krishna then explains the Pravriti Chakra, that is, the living beings are sustained by food, which in turn is sustained by rainwater, which is connected to the yajna or yaga that's done, which arises out of the actions, and the actions follow the scriptures, and which arises from the divine. Therefore, yajna is directly connected to the divine. So, Lord Krishna says one should constantly do the yajna or the yaga and then eat after distributing to others what is remaining instead of being selfish. And then Lord Krishna then says, தலைவன் எப்படி பண்ணுவானோ அப்படிதான் மற்றவங்க எல்லாம் பண்ணுவாங்க. That's what the leader does. Others follow. Therefore, he says the leader or the knowledgeable, enlightened, though for him the action may not be necessary, yet Lord Krishna says that leader should continue to do actions, indulge in actions, because rest of the people will emulate him. And if he does not do that, others will also stop action, and then they will neither be in the Jnana Marga nor in the Karma Marga. Therefore, that's a sin. அதுக்கப்புறம் Lord Krishna explains that all actions arise from the nature, from the three gunas, the sattva guna, rajas, and the tamas. They are associated with the prakriti, and it is part of the nature. Therefore, he says anyone who thinks that he is doing the work, he is mistaken. It's a folly. And finally, Lord Krishna says desire and anger, these are born out of the rajoguna. And he says these are one's biggest enemies. Therefore, one should control the desire and anger and elevate oneself from the rajoguna to sattoguna. There ends the chapter 3. The next chapter is chapter 4 with 42 shlokas. Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yoga, renunciation of action through knowledge. After gaining proficiency in Karma Yoga, the next logical step will be to gain knowledge through a competent guru and reach a state where one can even renounce the karma with the aim of crossing the barrier of samsara, that is to obtain freedom from the cycle of rebirths. Let's see in detail. When Lord Krishna told Arjuna that Krishna had taught the sun god Karma Yoga, Arjuna immediately questions the veracity of that statement, because Arjuna thinks Lord Krishna is just as young as Arjuna is. Krishna then explains his ageless unborn status, and he says that he takes avatar as though coming into being on this earth through his creative power wielded over his Prakriti. So he then explains that whenever தர்மத்துக்கு அழிவு வந்துட்டு அதர்மம் தலை தூக்கும்போது he says he takes an avatar. And the reason for the avatar is to protect the good people and to destroy the evil. And Lord Krishna himself is an avatar. Lord Krishna then stresses on the need for shedding the desire, fear, and anger before one can move further in the path towards liberation. He says that the discipline of knowledge purifies the mind. And he also says that whichever way people worship him, he answers their prayers in the same way. And he also mentions that some people, desirous of quick result on their actions, worship various deities because the results of action comes quickly through that. The next topic that was discussed was the creation of four varnas, the fourfold grouping of people, a division based on duties and qualities of individuals. It's a well-known factor that a person performs a task the best which suits his nature and his temperament. And Lord Krishna clarifies further that performance of one's task is paramount. ஒரு தொழில் செய்யும் போது அதுல attachment, that is when one is doing a task, an attachment to that or a desire for the results, அதனால தான் அந்த பாண்டிங் வருது. அந்த பாண்டேஜ் வந்துடுதுன்னா then one gets into samsara, the cycle of rebirth. அதனால one should stay detached from the task one is doing, and one should keep an equanimity of mind, be happy with whatever comes the way, and without jealousy perform the action. That is the way to stay free from bondage. Lord Krishna says that discipline of knowledge is superior to any other religious disciplines performed with materials. Therefore, he advocates gaining of the knowledge from a guru through humility and by asking questions. Gaining such a knowledge, one will not be deluded again. Also, knowledge dissolves all actions. Therefore, there is no sin that is attached with any action. And thus, Lord Krishna talks about the virtue of Karma Sanyasa, the renunciation of karma by gaining knowledge. Next in line is chapter 5 with 42 shlokas, Sanyasa Yoga, renunciation, that is renunciation of the karma. கர்ம யோகாங்கிறது வந்து உடல்னால செயல் புரிதல், that is doing actions with the body, whereas sannyasa yoga is body actions விட்டுட்டு உள்ளத்தால செயல்படுறது, that is actions only in the mind. And karma yoga and sannyasa yoga, they yield the same result in taking a person upward. Let's go into the detail. Arjuna gets confused when Lord Krishna first tells him to take the path of karma sannyasa, and then in the same breath tells him to follow the karma yoga, because that's what leads to ultimate knowledge, the jnana, atmajnana. So Arjuna tells Krishna, Krishna, please do not confuse me. Tell me one path. Is it karma yoga or karma sannyasa yoga? So Lord Krishna tells Arjuna that one without desire or hatred, he is a true sannyasi. So even a person in the Karma Yoga without desire, without hatred, he is eligible to be a sannyasi. And one cannot be a sannyasi unless one is an expert in the Karma Yoga. And Lord Krishna also says it is difficult for a non-yogi to renounce. அந்த கர்ம யோகிக்கு தான் சந்நியாசம் எடுத்துக்கிறதுக்கு முடியும். So if one is immersed in Sanyasa Yoga, who has mastery over the self, control over his senses, for him all lives are alike. So such a sannyasi, even if he does work, that does not bind him. That's the beauty of following the Karma Yoga and then taking to sannyasa after renouncing the karma. So no bondage, no samsara, no rebirth. All actions happen because of the three gunas in the nature and the sense organs interacting with them. A true yogi, knowing this, feels that he is not doing anything, be it eating, sleeping, seeing, hearing, whatever. He just feels that his sense organs are doing their work. So that is the level of maturity the yogi attains. So Lord Krishna says, such a yogi sheds desire and he does the karma with the body, mind, intellect, and the senses for purification of Atma. So even when he is doing the work, either by the body or the mind, a true yogi is not in fact doing any work. So he sees action in inaction and inaction in action. ஆத்மா தொழில் செய்யவும் தூண்டுறதில்ல, அதுவும் தொழில் செய்யறதில்ல. It's just a witness. That is, Atman neither creates doership nor actions for any person, nor the connections with the results of action. One's own nature leads to action. முதலே பார்த்த நம்ம. And Atman neither takes papa or punya of anyone, and usually the knowledge of self is covered by ignorance. When the knowledge is gained, the ignorance is destroyed, and that is compared to visibility of objects which were covered by darkness, which are revealed now when the sun shines. Because the enjoyments are born out of contact between the sense organs and objects, they are actually a source of pain. அதுக்கு முதலும் உண்டு, முடிவும் உண்டு. They have a beginning and they have an end. அதனால a wise person does not revel in them. And one who is able to master the force born of anger and desire, கோபம் and ஆசை, ரெண்டு விரோதிகள். So a person who is able to do it while alive, he is a karma yogi and he is a happy person. He is on way to liberation. And the wise people who see Brahman in all and all in Brahman, they are actually free from samsara or the rebirth. Therefore, Lord Krishna says that a sannyasi free from desire and anger, with the mind under control, and also knows the self, there is liberation for him. So in the mind control, the sense control, freedom from desire, freedom from anger, இது திரும்பி திரும்பி வந்துட்டு இருக்கும் because they are important to gain control over this. It's for emphasis. Karma Sanyasiக்கு வந்து the contentment, Atma Tripti சொல்லுவாங்க. He is full of that and he is happy inside. His mind is awake to Atma. So he gains the freedom that is Brahman. And that sannyasi, he is not affected by the external objects. And the கண்ணு ரெண்டும் க்ளோஸ் பண்ண மாதிரி, seeing between the two eyebrows onto the tip of the nose. That is, with his eyes partially closed and focus between the two brows onto the tip of the nose, and he sits with control over the action organs, sense organs, the mind, the intellect, is free from fear, free from desire, anger. That person is on way to his path of liberation. So Lord Krishna slowly takes Arjuna now on to the next chapter, that is Dhyana Yoga. Chapter 6 is the last chapter in the first Shatkam. With 47 shlokas, it is Dhyana Yoga, or the path of meditation. From Sankhya Yoga to Karma Yoga to Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yoga to Sanyasa Yoga, we have come into the Dhyana Yoga. It is meditation, sitting into deep thinking with the idea of calming the mind. Let's recap contents of this chapter. In the usual parlance, sannyasi சொல்லும்போது, we normally mean a person who has renounced all the fire rituals and who does not perform any action, any other action. On the contrary, நம்ம கர்ம சந்நியாசி சொல்லும்போது, he performs all actions that are required to be done, but he is not driven by the ends in view. He is a sannyasi as well as a yogi. He is a karma yogi and a karma sannyasi. And the person who has mastered himself, he is his best friend. And the person who is not mastered himself, self alone is the enemy for him. And for a person whose mind is in a state of composure, for him, earth, stone, gold, they are all alike. He is detached, he is a yogi, and he has got a same vision towards all, friend, foe, relative, the good people, bad people, same level of vision, and he is truly liberated. He is a yogi as well as a sannyasi. Lord Krishna then gives brief guidelines for the process of meditation. He says the body and the mind are to be relaxed, free from desire or the possessions, and அந்த ஆளு தனிமையில போய் குவைட் பிளேஸ்ல உட்காந்துட்டு sits in a quiet place and then uniting his mind with the object, the goal, the Brahman. And we had said earlier also, his body, head, and the neck are to be in a straight line, as though looking at the top of his nose and not looking in all directions. அவனோட மைண்ட் வந்து ட்ராங்குலா இருக்கு, அமைதியா இருக்கு, பீஸ்ஃபுல்லா இருக்கணும். And it should be free from fear, established in his commitments to life. And then think of only that ultimate goal, that is the Brahman. And he withdraws his mind from everything else. That's the way. Lord Krishna then stresses on the point that moderation is the key prerequisite for meditation. He says meditation is not for one who eats too much or for the one who does not eat at all. Moderation. அதே போலதான் தூக்கம் கூட. He says meditation is not for the one who sleeps too much or for one who is always awake. And he says meditation destroys sorrow. It calms the mind. So he says slowly resolve the mind in Atman. And he also suggests that when the mind goes away, one should bring it back. And happiness is definite for a person whose mind is calm without impurities or the defects, and he himself becomes a Brahman. Lord Krishna then tells Arjuna that a Dhyana Yogi has a vision of sameness. எல்லார்கிட்டயும் சமநிலையில பார்க்குற மாதிரி. He sees himself in others, he sees all others in himself. There is no difference for him. And he sees God in everybody, and he sees everybody as part of God. So அவனுக்கு வந்து சுகம் வந்தாலும் துக்கம் வந்தாலும் whether he gets happiness or sorrow, it does not affect him. இதை கேட்ட உடனே அர்ஜுனாக்கு வந்து ஒரு பெரிய டவுட் வந்துடுது. Because Arjuna is already in a disturbed state of mind. So he is asking Lord Krishna, Krishna, is that possible for this sameness to be achieved by anybody? Because the mind is always agitated. And is there a possibility? So Lord Krishna gives a reassuring answer to Arjuna, tells him how it is possible to make an agitated mind calm with meditation. Lord Krishna concedes to the point that mind is generally agitated and difficult to master. But one can definitely do it, master it by practice and objectivity. And Lord Krishna says, yoga is difficult to gain when mind is not mastered. Any yoga, Karma Yoga or Sanyasa Yoga or even the Dhyana Yoga. It is difficult to gain when the mind is not mastered. Therefore, mind mastery is important. And then Arjuna has a doubt. What happens to a person with a faith in Shastra but inadequate effort and the wandering mind? Adnala, he is not able to follow the path of yoga fully. What happens to him? Is he destroyed like a cloudlet? Lord Krishna reassures him. He says, performance of good actions never go waste. They never reach a bad end. And so he says, anyone who is not able to complete his yoga process gets a rebirth in a cultured family so that he can pursue that path again and redeem himself. So thus ends the chapter 6 and the first Shatkam. So we saw a quick revision of the first 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, which form one Shatkam, the first Shatkam. So in our study Bhagavad Gita for beginners, we saw chapter 1, Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Arjuna's sorrow. Though it has 47 shlokas, we took only 3 shlokas. This chapter primarily concerns with Arjuna's sorrow and a brief description of the battlefield scenario. Then was Sankhya Yoga, analytical knowledge. Out of the 72 shlokas, we discussed in detail, that is, with a guided chanting and detailed explanation, 28 of them. This is because chapter 2 is a window to Bhagavad Gita. It reveals everything that is to follow summarily. Chapter 3 was Karma Yoga, doing one's actions as a yoga. unison of body, mind and the intellect. Out of 43 shlokas, we discuss 4 in detail. Of course, in all these chapters, uncovered shlokas, essence was also covered in brief. Chapter 4 was Jnana Karma Sanyasa Yoga, renunciation of action through knowledge. That is doing work as a yoga, that's Karma Yoga, and later on learning to gaining the knowledge, dispelling the ignorance with an idea of renouncing even the actions, attributing them as offering to the Supreme Lord. Chapter 5 was Sannyasa Yoga, the renunciation proper. So, renunciation of the karmas so that one is not conscious that he is doing the work. He is dropping the idea of notion of job, doing an action, as well as the karma pala. And finally, in chapter 6, which is Dhyana Yoga, meditation, out of 47 shlokas, we discussed 3. In all, in the first Shatkam, out of 280 shlokas, we took for detailed discussion 52 shlokas, while the remaining shlokas were given the brief essence. So we come to the end of first Shatkam, the first 6 chapters. As I had mentioned a little while ago, after this session, there will be a gap necessitated due to personal commitments that have arisen for me. I'll definitely resume it soon and I will indicate to you when it's going to start again from chapter 7. Thank you all for staying with me and for the constant support. Take care. Namaste, everybody.
ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः